Welcome to the International Christian Choral Celebration listening panel, and we've snuck up to the studio upstairs after spending pretty much the whole day listening to our playlists of beautiful, unaccompanied sacred choral music. And we are here to, having listened, to reflect further on what we've learnt and the things that have come out of that for us. And so I just want to start by saying thank you for listening today, and if you could just tell me what things have really kind of spoken to you, what things have jumped out that you weren't expecting today.
For myself, I guess, participating as a listener is different when I'm, usually the singer, I suppose. And what does that mean in the context of worship? Are you still actively participating in worship by being the listener?
And did you find that meant you had to do something sort of actively as a listener? Engage in a particular way?
No, I don't think so.
No.
I think it's still like a co-shared experience.
Yeah, but I mean, did you find yourself concentrating on certain aspects of the music or the words, or given we had such an intense and sort of concentrated span of listening, I found that I was listening in a different way.
Yeah.
It was just lovely to have the time to do so, in fact.
Well, actually, my experience of listening did change depending on what I was experiencing visually. Yeah. So the way that, other senses like sight is engaged in the process as well. For example, when you could actually see the bodies that the sound was coming out of, and when you could see them in a particular context that has a lot of inference to it, versus, if you were sort of looking at the score. And then what does that mean to be looking at the score if you're not someone who reads that form of notation? What does it mean to be able to understand the text versus if it's in a language foreign to you? Is it still something that you can actively share and participate in, or is that some sort of a barrier? And when there are those barriers there, what then activates in me to find other ways of connection, other inroads into the experience? Like, for example, if I don't understand what they're singing about, what else am I connecting to then? And often it becomes about, for me, it's tone colour is very prominent all the time. And I feel like I can sort of understand what's being communicated despite not hearing or understanding the text. Although there was one moment when I was surprised by the text because the music itself was very dark harmonically and there was no text on the screen yet, and then the English translation came up and it was like really joyful. So I found that quite interesting as well.
Do you remember which piece that was?
No, I wrote it. It's somewhere on here, but it'll take me forever to find it.
Andrew, what were you going to?
I was just going to say, just the infinitude or the multiple ways, never-ending ways that God can be praised, glorified, sung. And we looked over pieces that in the near future and the near past and the far past, but from many different backgrounds. But it seems that it's a never-ending tap in the same way that God himself can never be known and truly mastered by the human mind. And it's just an unfathomable, inexhaustible source of rediscovery, discovery of how many ways it's possible and to emote, to praise, to contemplate, to meditate, sometimes to do it all within one piece. It's just all the possibilities are there. So many people can think that sacred music, because they've had very limited exposure to it, is quite limiting. It's almost maybe a bit chaste, a little bit cloistered, if you like.
Yeah.
But the reality for me today was that it's far beyond that. And as many cultures, as many peoples, as many different ages have existed, and will continue to exist, the name of the Lord will continue to be glorified in song, and that's something very optimistic and very hopeful. It's an unending source of grace, really, and then we're blessed to receive that. And that's what I took away from today.
And did you find that there were pieces that you were surprised by how you were able to connect to them?
Maybe not surprised because they were from a different
No.
tradition, not at all. God goes deep, much deeper than all of that, and much deeper than what my own, feeble human senses can detect. But I was surprised that there's so many things that I hadn't listened to, and it's sort of driven me now to have a new sort of hunger to explore a lot of different areas of world Christian sacred choral music, even unaccompanied. There's a lot there, and I hope that it's encouraged everyone who's watching and all of us here to do the same as well. Yeah.
Absolutely agree with that sentiment. Antony, it's really impressive the breadth of the music we listened to today, and we basically covered sort of all the continents, so many different countries. Yep. And it was really amazing just to see that we could connect, and many of us did connect to countries and musical styles that we've really never heard before. I was really impressed by that. It's an interesting experience being a listener for this because, in some sense, a video format with audio is something that you listen to rather than participate in. But I do wonder with some of these, the songs that we heard today, that they come from participatory cultures, that they come from, like, for instance, some of the Hillsong ones we heard, or the more contemporary ones, have the lyrics on there that you might sing or that might be played in a church. And then likewise, some other music that we heard, the way the video presentation was a large group of people singing together and sort of wanting to draw you into that to sing maybe the chorus or something. So the experience of a listener is an unusual kind of relationship with the performance. But it is really wonderful when we get to see the visual component too, and we got to experience how they sing it in their church, particularly live or wherever they were singing it at. For instance, just looking at Central Australia, for instance, that they sang it there, within the natural landscape. So that was really had an impression on me. As much as this was an audio experience, it was also somewhat a visual one to see what's...
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was, and picking up on what Sonya was saying as well. There was one song where it, at the end it said "end of song," just to let you know that it was, you need to be ready for the next thing. But and I also found when we were listening to the prodigal son, the Byzantine or newer Byzantine chant, trying to follow the notation. I mean, that was. When the page turned in the video, and so finally I knew where we were, and then just trying to follow it was a really interesting experience. But then, as you say, we had the bodies of performers moving around. We had places. We had just one image for a whole video, which is, again, that's a very sort of static feel and puts you in a slightly different place as a listener.
Yeah. There were times, though, that I did want to close my eyes as well, I think, and that, just thinking of something like Orthodox music where the choir might be hidden anyway, perhaps you are put into that space where you want to close your eyes and just hear the choral sound.
Yeah, I did that too. I closed my eyes.
Yeah. As I've been listening, I've been reflecting on the words "Sing to the Lord a new song," and so much of what we heard today, I mean, none of it was written today. It's all older than today. Some of it not that old, some of it really old, and yet most of it was completely new. And there's something about, we've been reflecting on the listening experience, and I'm struck by the notion that I think I have lived under an unspoken or unrecognised assumption that the new song must be something completely newly written under the sun. Except that in the act of stopping and paying attention, we actually let ourselves into that new thing and that new connection that has not yet existed, because in a sense we're looking towards God with a new anticipation and a new set of ears, a new set of eyes, a new set of senses, and we're hearing voices that we haven't heard. I found that even hearing the songs that I know like the back of my hand, like 10,000 Reasons, I could play it now and not even think about it. But even in that experience where the polyphony of the different voices, I didn't know what the individual voices were going to do. And so there was this new sense of eager anticipation to see where that thread was going to flow to tell the greater whole. And I think something in that listening practice tells us something more than what it is to hear a song, and more about how we actually learn to connect across our traditions, connect across our cultures, anticipating that God is alive and writing good stuff in us as we do so.
Yeah, and I also thought connecting with the past.
Right.
For me particularly, I mean, obviously the Peritan Viderant Omnes from Notre Dame Cathedral I know very well, having recorded it. But even with that, I was feeling myself back in the space in the 12th century. Like what was it like for those worshippers to be making those sounds in the building? And then even more so in the earlier one, the Winchester Troper, I think it's sort of 10th century, where for the first time you're getting two voices. One, you've got your plain chant, and then one voice is sort of moving against it, sort of grinding away, and they're going, ooh, what are these lovely new, it's a new song, as you say, is it? These new sounds that were happening. And trying to put myself in the shoes of the people then, discovering these sounds for the first time.
And it was new for them, but it's also new for us every time we hear it for the first time.
Right.
Yeah.
As well. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think reflecting on your question earlier about the work of hearing something, I think to sit and hear it again, it would be a different kind of work, and we would hear or I would hear very different threads, and in a sense it would be new again.
Yeah.
It's like reading the Bible in that sense.
Something new
It's
always
living.
pops out.
It's a living word.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
One of the lessons from today for me, by the force of circumstances, what we've made it to be, is actually taking time to sit and listen, which obviously we're all very busy and everything gets in the way, but to do that and to sit back was I found very valuable personally.
It's not something we do get to do very often.
Were there any just back to some of the pieces and some of the contrasts? We talked earlier about the sort of fragility of the human voice and the different timbres and colours that came out. I mean, the one that I go back to, I have known for a long time, is the Corsican chant. The sort of version of Corsican singing applied to some of that sort of 17th century harmonies. But were there other particular pieces of music?
I was very impressed by the Zoe group, through all those contemporary songs. I think we heard three of them.
Yes. On the whole, I really tried to spread everything out.
Yes.
And then but I didn't know who was doing those ones, and I looked and oh my goodness, they're all the same. It's the same
Well,
group.
they were a very good ensemble.
Yeah. But of course, they have that very produced studio sound where kind of nothing does go wrong, really, which is a world away from some of the other performances where you hear every crack in the voice and you actually like it. It's part of the
It's texture.
yeah.
One thing I was thinking about was the role of the conductor, if and when there was one, in the same sense that, what does it mean to not be a singer but to be a listener, like we were today? What does it mean to not be a singer but be the conductor as well? Because, they're obviously participating as well. And, I mean, there's more to it than that as well. In a way, it seemed like, I think there was one in particular, it occurred to me, like, it looks like this person is singing with their body. They're sort of actually doing the same thing as everyone else. In a way, it's just being expressed slightly differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking from experience as a conductor, I always talk about and try and make happen the sense of being in the present, very much so. So you're not, because otherwise you can get bogged down in what's happened, including mistakes, and worrying about what's coming around the corner. But actually, to make really fine music, for me, it's about being in the absolute moment. So if you're an individual singer, it's about where you are in your line and how holding it there, and it's going somewhere, but not worrying too much about where it's going. And the same with the conductor. You're doing that with everybody. You're trying to get the most out of every moment while feeling the trajectory of the whole, but not getting bogged down by it. And going back to the visual when we had the scores on the screen, I mean, it's really interesting to see that. But to me, what I don't like about that is that you can see the end.
Yeah.
You can see what's coming up. So the story's spoilt because you can sort of read ahead and you can see when it's going to stop.
Yeah.
I think another thing that stuck out for me was the aspect of the performance space. If you can call a church or a temple a performance space, was a lot of those clips that we saw were within in situ in an actual performance space. Even some of the recordings where there was no visuals, I believe, would have been done in temples of sort, and that was historically informed as well, because there was a given reverb to a lot of that medieval and Renaissance and the Gregorian stuff that we heard. But there was some outdoor performances as well. Even in the last playlist, the combined mass forces of Tahiti, that would have been somewhere. So it's amazing how, even though it's church music, where do we take the concept of church building, church structure? It's really quite free. And even though church in the Greek, the ecclesial, in other words, the calling together to something, well, it didn't really matter if it's an enclosed something together. People were together in a space, and they were within each other's space. They weren't on other sides of, the world. They were communicating. And the different choir patterns, arrangements. The direct to choir, conductor choir, circular, different rows, all the physicalities of how this music is presented. Well,
particularly, although we couldn't see it, but in the Talus Speminalium, which we talked about earlier, with the 8 choirs, 5 parts in each, and we were able to see that very very interesting diagram of what was happening with the notes. But if we'd seen the choirs, they were probably also standing in a circle, and you'd get that. You'd see the antiphonal effects where you get one choir singing and echoed by another choir, but standing apart from them, but in the same overall space.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were reflecting earlier on the part that the setting plays in giving another voice to the piece, and I was reflecting. We've reflected on that in terms of the First Nations choir and the other choir,
From Mozambique.
Mozambique, that's right. But even in the cathedral space, whether we could see it or not, the power of the build-up, only to let it go and let the setting carry its voice, in a sense. The power of that was quite extraordinary, and I think for me, they're some of the most memorable moments. Is not so much where the singing was starting; it was when it stopped, and that other voice was able to carry. I think the recognition of that other voice is something I'll take with me. Yeah.
The recognition of place, really.
Right.
In a way. Yeah.
Well, some of that music, like Back to the Peregrine, was only written because the buildings were being made big enough, and and would have informed, is my understanding, the way of structuring the music itself. So you can hold things for a long time, and you can allow things to jump around and hock it backwards and back and forth.
Reverb is it's so fascinating. As drones, it's like you've got this kind of bed that you can plant yourself back into, and
We heard a lot of that with the soloist, when there was a soloist and there was a choir underneath them, and that happened for quite a few different pieces of different genres too.
Yeah.
And that in itself, being in a choir where you're singing a drone or something, is a listening experience in itself. Listening to the soloist and following them. There may not be a conductor in that case, but rather the soloist is leading. I was also thinking of it's called an Int'l, the one
The
from
Mozambique.
yes, that's right.
Int'l. Yeah.
Where the singer, the soloist, is leading the choir, and the choir is kind of responding to him.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. Yeah. Actually, the just reflecting on what you were saying about the reverb. You know, there's certain settings where there's big reliance on amplifiers and stages and electronic equipment and so on, where reverb is actually a trick to mask the inadequacy of the singer and maybe the inadequacy of the space. And yet we actually got to hear it as a legitimate voice in the piece. And, yeah.
rather than a band-aid or something.
Yeah.
Which then, if you get under that band-aid, like, what's the belief that's there as well? That these sort of like idiosyncrasies of the humanity or vulnerability of the vessel must not be heard.
Yeah.
And can we just talk about the sort of breadth of subject matter that we've covered? Because I mean, there is some there were some things I did put together in the playlist so that it was like and like, but often not. But I was aware that we were covering actually in terms of the Bible, in terms of the story of redemption and the gospel, really quite a lot of different aspects of it, without going, now we're going to do this, now we're going to tell this. I just wonder how that came across, because we were listening to so much. Did you get a sense of all those different stories?
Yeah, I got a reminder of the breadth of the Christian experience, and that these things can and do coexist in that experience. So, you know, there's suffering and there's joy and there's there's peace, and you know, there's all these, and they actually can and do coexist together.
And in the Orthodox tradition, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there a sense in which every week you re-celebrate the resurrection? Sort of.
It is, yeah. It's done on a cycle of eight tones, and then the cycle repeats. And it starts with Easter Sunday. But yeah, whilst listening to all this, I found obviously a lot of the content based on the Psalms of David, and then on actual phrases out and stories from the Old and New Testament, and then all the, I suppose, newer hymns that have been written over the ages based on the gospel. But I was listening to different psalms or different hymns that from different traditions, and thinking how we sing them, how we chant them in my tradition, saying, and to see that in many ways, depending on what the psalmic verse was, or what verse of the Gospels was being performed, in many ways there's a commonality in terms of the performance tradition, even though they're from different, in terms of the joyousness, the enthusiasm, the way that rhythm is inserted, and then seeing also how, from the other aspect, the more penitential, the more enclosed, the more meditative aspects, and there's a commonality there, which is amazing, even though they're different traditions, different styles, just in terms of that immediate emotional engagement with the text that came through from all the different parts of the world.
Yeah. I think on that theme, and to extend that theme, you know, as you read from psalm to psalm to psalm to psalm, you know, you can go from something that where someone gets into trouble and it resolves, and then there's one that's mostly about the trouble, another one that's mostly about the joy, and then there'll be something really dark like Psalm 88, and then either side of it is rapture, and each piece has its place, right? And it struck me with the I don't know how to pronounce it, Schnittke?
Schnittke.
Yeah.
Adam sat weeping at the gates of paradise. Now, that's, in my tradition, that's not a worship song that we'd find on any given Sunday. And the musicality of the composition, just the chromatic patterns of the weeping and perhaps even the decision of God to come down to where Adam was for the sake of redemption. It was remarkable how important that voice had its place in the great breadth of the history, and also the breadth of style that we heard. So the importance of lament, and I think we also saw a version of that in the Mozambique choir, where essentially we saw that kind of psalm told with the language of Jesus in the manger, and from that place where we're normally associated with glory, hallelujah, angels singing, the visitors coming with their gifts, here we have a guttural cry for God. Will you come? Will you come inside? Will you abide with us? What a beautiful retelling of the great cry and the great hope.
Well, the way you've named the playlists was apt, I think.
Yeah.
And just looking at playlist 2, for instance, Come Into His Presence with Singing. We got that right from all the different performances, but in such different ways. Some of them being a cry, even the sort of more, might we say, sort of intellectually composed works that are quite complicated and would have been quite difficult to sing as well. They had that kind of intensity, but maybe in that sense it's not on the individual level, who's maybe the singer's just thinking about how they get the notes right, but when it comes together as an ensemble, then you get that real effect. Whereas with other ones, we get sort of expressions of pure joy, and that's another kind of sense that this gets expressed. So yeah, I really appreciated that hearing those different sounds.
Well, that's been a really very fascinating discussion, a wonderful day together here at the International Christian Choral Celebration 2025 at Excelsia University College. Just remains for me to announce the winner of the William Byrd Prize, which goes this year to Cape Town Camerata, particularly for their performance of Precious Lord by Thomas Dorsey. We were unanimous in our choice. It moved all of us, both in terms of the performance, and the harmony, and the presentation.
Yeah, it stuck out.
Yeah.
It was a blend thing to me. It was a blend.
Balance,
Balance,
unison.
yeah.
Some gorgeous chords.
The enthusiasm and
Yeah.
the reaching up, stand.
Yeah. And to say thank you to my listening panel here, Andrew Psarommatis, Titus Grenyer, Sonya Holowell, Matthew Holt, and from me, Anthony Pitts. Thank you for listening.